Hey, BraveCo man. This week's episode is from a podcast that I did with DadAwesome. And I love the podcast so much that I thought we should play it on ours. I really hope that you guys enjoy it.
Jay, this is pretty fun because it's been about 4 years since you were on Dad Awesome last, and you added a baby, a little son. I added a daughter since then. So welcome back to Dad Awesome.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's such a privilege to be on here and just so crazy how quick life goes. Um, and and also like, what happens in 4 years.
It's real. There's a lot of, I mean,
For
a
real.
lot of change in your world and in mine and in the guys listening. So any guys who have already
It's
listened,
true.
man, and if you haven't heard, we're going to link back to the previous conversation. But I thought as a just a launch in point to start at this word that I actually studied yesterday, the idea of being wholehearted, living wholeheartedly. I studied the side by side of Deuteronomy 6 and Deuteronomy 11, where it's talking
Mhm.
about, man, memorizing scripture, telling our kids about all that God's done, writing it on our doorposts and gates and on our strapping it to our wrists and foreheads. But both of them, it launches in like this call to live wholeheartedly. What does that stir up in you, Jay, when you think about like dads living wholeheartedly?
Gosh, man. I mean, the first thing that I think is like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And because I don't want to assume that I am fully doing that. One of the scriptures, one of the prayers that David prays is like, God, search me, know me, like reveal to me what's going on in my life, which honestly is like such a scary, dangerous like prayer, because but on the other side, I think that in order to live wholeheartedly, we do have to address those areas in our life that aren't whole, that that have cracks or a little bit of brokenness or doubt or uh, uh, lies, and that's a very challenging thing to do because I think it always preaches good, like scriptures like that preach good, and I'm not dogging anybody. I'm saying like that's a feel good message. When you get out of church, you're like, man, I'm gonna live wholeheartedly and be. But what that really means is when I come home and my wife confronts me on something and I dismiss her feelings, I'm not living wholeheartedly. When I come home and my kids want to play and I don't want to be present, I'm actually not living wholeheartedly. And it's very hard to um the practical application of being, because the things that you write on your heart, the things that you write on your wrist, the things that the truth, God's truth, right? You have to live those out in your day-to-day life. And there's accountability inside of that. And we don't talk about accountability a lot in our day and age. There's not a lot of accountability, but God has a standard. And can you imagine? I honestly don't know what would happen if God came down today and highlighted every area of my life that I'm not living wholeheartedly in. Like the truth is that it wouldn't just be sin areas, because I don't have any outward sin area that I'm like, I haven't looked at pornography honestly since I was 16 years old. I've had bad thoughts for sure, 100%. I've looked at another woman and been like, wow, wish I could have her. And so those are places that, like, I would say were sin areas in my life where I've stumbled like that before. But then there's other areas that aren't sin but aren't wholehearted, right? That are just below God's standard. And and so when sorry, I'm going along, but I
I
think
love it.
really when it gets down to like, what does it mean to be a wholehearted man? It means that you don't violate your conscience and that you're living to God's standard. Because sometimes you do things that don't violate your conscience, but that aren't at God's standard. And I have to correct those, right? Like I have to change those. I have to, it could be as simple as like me not feeling confident in in myself and who God's called me to be. Like that's below God's standard. That's actually not walking wholeheartedly towards the calling of God has on your life. And then when we get even more, it's, well, it's like being fearful, right? Like God's called me to take BraveCo to X thing, to do X thing. And I'm like, I don't think that I can accomplish that. That's not actually pursuing God wholeheartedly. And so it goes beyond, like, I think the baseline is like, yeah, if you have sin in your life, and that's the easy things to find. Those are like, you know about it, right? Like you're doing things with your eyes and your hands and your body that you're not supposed to do. That's the easy stuff. The hard, am I walking out this life wholeheartedly, is when it's, am I walking the, am I fulfilling the call? Am I letting fear shrink me? Am I backing down? Am I being present every day? Am I allowing my wife to give me feedback and input? Am I being moved by the Holy Spirit when I'm playing with my kids? Not like am I falling out on the Holy Spirit, but like am I allowing the Holy Spirit to go, "Hey, you need to be gentle here. Hey, actually you told her no, but she's really going through something hard. You actually need to listen to what she's going through. Don't just tell her no." It's those kinds of things. Like when I think about being a wholehearted man, a man after God's heart, it's tough. It's tough. It's really being intentional and being tuned in and turned on to what is God doing in my life right now? And am I being attentive? Am I a steward of all that he's doing in my life?
Yes. When I think of a gauge of a dashboard on my living wholeheartedly, for me, the five people that help me most with that are my four little daughters and my wife. And it's I
Yeah.
just see in those interactions it's most clear. No, I was lacking there. Oh, I missed it there. And they
Yeah.
have tons of grace, tons of forgiveness. But you mentioned your wife and dismissing her feelings. That'd be an example of like, no, that wasn't wholehearted. But I want to go into that relationship. For us that are married, you wrote a couple statements. I think I found this on your Instagram. I can't remember. I pull all kinds of things preparing for these conversations, but you talked about a
Awesome.
turning point in your marriage. And you said, when I quit trying to talk my wife out of her negative emotions, instead, I just met her there where she was at. And you went on to say, my wife's emotions were not something to fix, but something to connect to. Now, I read that this morning in preparation. If I would have read that yesterday morning, it would have
That would
been
help.
really good. It would have been really good for
Me too.
Michelle and me. So, would you take us into that topic of like, man, how do we live wholeheartedly into that connection in that place of not trying to fix?
Yeah. So I used to think that um I used to think that I was doing a great job by not having very many needs in a relationship, not being tough, not being tough to live with, and that I could take a lot, I can handle a lot. I could really meet a lot of my wife's needs, and but really what was happening is, so I was very high pleasing, like which isn't bad as a personality type. I am just by nature high pleasing. You by nature are high pleasing. Um, it's part of like the counselor in us. It's part of the pastor in us. Is like I really, really want to help people, and I really don't want to be a burden. That's all good. But what also was happening in me, more importantly, was I was afraid. I was afraid of conflict. I was afraid of what would happen if I went against the grain. If I told my wife, I don't actually like how you talk to me there. I don't like how you're treating me here. Or it was just so much easier to like, and I wasn't like a total pushover, right? Like I'm not like, oh, just letting somebody run me over, but it's like the small things like, I'm just gonna let that slide. She's on her period, like I'm not, she's in the middle of cooking dinner. Like she didn't really mean it. She's just like stressed out. And and so what I started to realize is I'm afraid of my wife's emotions. I'm afraid of her anger. I'm afraid of her frustration. And my wife's not like this horrible person. I'm just afraid, right? Like I just have fear. And so what also would happen is when my wife would have high emotions, like let's say I come home and she's saying, I'm just so frustrated with the kids. My initial feeling is, I got to fix this. I got to solve this. Like we can't have a frustrated woman running around here. And the truth is like, I'm not trying to solve it so that her life's better. I'm trying to solve it so that my life's better. And if I can't solve it, the next best option was dismiss it. It's not, babe, it's not that bad. The kids are, they're just kids. They're just doing what kids do. Instead of going, tell me about that. A woman has three basic needs, and they have more needs than that. But in a relationship, to be seen, to be known, and to be heard. To be seen, known, and heard. And if you meet those needs, if she feels seen, if she feels known, and she feels heard, it's like everything else works. But as soon as she doesn't feel seen, as soon as she doesn't feel known, as soon as she doesn't feel heard, she's gonna fight or flight, right? She's gonna do one of the. She's gonna emotionally retreat, and you're not gonna get her, right? You don't really have your wife. You may have a cordial, peaceful relationship, but you don't actually have your wife. Or she's going to fight, right? Because she feels invalidated, she feels frustrated, she feels wrong, and so you're in a constant fight. But as soon as you see, know, and hear, so right, so I come home, same scenario. My wife says, "Oh, the kids were so terrible today. I feel so angry," and I realize anger is just an emotion. It's not good nor bad. It just is. And I go, "Oh, babe, tell me about that. That sucks. Tell me about that." Now I'm going against the grain of what I want to do. I hope guys hear that. Like I'm afraid. I feel fear now, right? Like I'm having emotion. I feel fear. I feel frustrated. I'm bummed out, but I'm saying, "Hey babe, tell me about that. What happened today?" And she goes, "Oh, Edie's been screaming all morning long. She's had a really tough day, and Liam's got a cold, and so, he's just whiny." And I go, "Oh yeah, it's so tough. That is so tough." Okay, the Gottman Institute calls this a bid for connection, right? And we know that they can basically predict divorce based upon if you are able to meet or if you don't meet your wife's or your partner's bid for connection. And these bid for connections are these small little touch points. I come home from work today and I'm going to tell her something. I'm going to say, "Oh man, today was really frustrating. I had my next podcast appointment just canceled." And if she doesn't see me and hear me and validate where I'm at, then I actually just don't feel any connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I get resentful. So that's the next step, right? Is I get resentful. So again, like I think what I have practiced, this is not my normal. This is against my normal. This is a sacrifice of loving her. This is a sacrifice of loving me. This is a vision point in my life. I want my kids to say, "I want a marriage like mom and dad." So this is why I choose to do this. And I practice, guys. Like I practice a lot. I put it in my mind when I'm driving home. Like I want to be present for my wife and for my kids in these moments. And if it sucks, it's going to be worth it. But here's what happens, right? I push through my fear. I go, "Babe, tell me about that." She unloads, and I'm thinking, "Oh, tonight's going to be horrible." But tonight's never horrible because of that. It actually gets better, right? Because she expresses her emotions. That brings connection. That brings a sense of relief. She is not staying in that moment. She had that moment. And now I'm able to really meet her where she's at, and I get the reward of that, which probably isn't sex. It's probably a deeply connected relationship, which sometimes is sex, but most of the time is I have a real partner
Yeah.
who feels cared for and loved and known. And in return, she wants to do that for me.
Right. There's a whisper in that scenario that you just talked about of my wife saying, "Man, this was so hard and school and house and management and this trip and like things are not the wheels are coming off this thing." Like, right. What I hear is a whisper of I have failed as a husband. I have failed as a father. I have failed as a provider. Like I hear these whispers of her
Mm.
emotion has caused me to be a failure. And it's a total lie because what she wants is what you're describing. She really wants to be seen, known, heard. Like, but that's what would you say to like me expressing? I was able to actually walk through. Michelle, like, I think I'm feeling like a failure here. And that's why I'm coming
It's
back with
amazing.
strength and pushback. I actually had to write it on a note card of like, this is how I feel. Because I could not, I was such emotion of wanting to push back against her emotion. How would you kind of take me into that a little deeper?
Dude, that's magical, right? Because we all want to be able to say that we nail this 100% of the time in the moment. Like, this is what I do for a living. It's what you do for a living. And I mean, some days I get my butt kicked, right? But can you repair? If you can repair, see, we think that trust is built through the absence of mistakes, but trust is not built through the absence of mistakes. Trust is built by often by how you clean up a mess. And see, your wife trusts you because she knows you can have a bad moment. You're going to go away. You're going to process through that in a healthy way and come back and give her what you wish you would have given her in the moment. And that's more valuable than being able to nail it every time because we innately know no one's going to nail it every time. But what we don't know is, can I trust that you're going to come back and repair what has been damaged? If you can repair, I really want guys to hear this. If you can repair what you are messing up, you're adding so much more value than just trying to get it right perfect every or expecting yourself to. So you're not, and your wife's not. Your wife's not. More importantly, your whole environment isn't. So your kids are going to watch you do this process. Your wife's going to watch you do this process, and they're going to follow in this ecosystem that it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
It's not okay to hurt each other. It's okay to fail because we can go back and clean up a mess. So I would, for starters, that's the baseline, right? That's a foundation that we're trying to lay. And I think as you get really good, now what we're talking about is can you be self-aware with what you're really feeling, what you're really needing, what's really going on inside of you. And self-awareness really is the key here. And we can give some tips and tools for that. But that's really what's happening, right? You come home, your wife's talking to you, and you're feeling shame, you're feeling guilt, you're feeling some sense of remorse, whatever, anger. And if you're self-aware enough, you start to realize, oh, shoot, I'm feeling guilt, I'm feeling shame, I'm feeling remorse. You could even stop right there and just say, gosh, babe, I feel a lot of shame right now. I feel a lot of guilt. Like, or you can put that on the shelf and go, okay, that's what I'm feeling. I don't know that that's true. You could be the scientist. I don't actually know that that's what she's saying. And you can just meet her where she's at. My wife and I have a saying that you can really only process one person's needs and emotions at one at a time, right?
Yeah.
At a time. And so it's so much better if you can just kind of like shelf what you're feeling for the moment and really deal with her, really meet her. And if she wants to tell you, hey, I feel really frustrated at your lack of, you know, parenting me or parenting the kids, and that felt, then allow her to say that. Otherwise, go, oh, tell me about that. Ooh,
Yeah.
tell me about that. So then, the next, like if you have some key phrases, if guys just have some key phrases that they know they can practice, and honestly, it sounds really dumb, sounds really scripted, but that's what you need because in the moment you're scared. So your adrenaline's pumping, you feel like you're in a fight. If you can just say, hey, tell me about that. Um, or wow, that sounds really hard. Um, what do you need? Amazing, right? She's going to meet you in that moment and unpack more. And later you can go on and say, gosh, when you're talking about that, I just felt like a failure. Um,
Yeah.
but you can always address that later.
So tactically, this happened like 3 nights ago. This is fresh stuff here.
I
I
love it.
I was able to capture what you just said as far as no, we really need to stay focused on one person at a time. And I actually used the tool. I used Voxer from she was in the house, and I said, "Hey, let me just give me 5 or 10 minutes, just process, pray." And I thought I might just like jot down some notes to come back, but I actually just sent her a message. Hey, these are some of the ways that I like that I am feeling right now, and so it's segmented to I was able to share kind of my heart, and that did kind of change the whole evening. So it's just a tactical way.
Mm.
One other thing I learned from you, it may have been in your book. Jay, or maybe it was also Instagram, which has been great. And I'll link your Instagram to make sure our community is
Cool.
following you.
Yeah. Thanks.
But you talked about this conversation hack of, man, how do you want this conversation to end? And if we just come in with knowing, well, I want to move from my arriving home into dinner with the family, like that conversation moment, I want it to end like this. And it's my wife feeling loved, supported, hugged. Like I want it to end like that. Well, that kind of
Mm.
changes how we approach and enter in. Could you unpack that a little
Yeah,
further?
that was great. And I got that from John Gottman. So I wish it was mine. I wish I had all the science behind that. But I implemented this probably like 10 years ago in my life. And it's as a counselor, even it's a game changer. But it works so well with confrontation. It works with your wife. Like when couples get in a really tough spot, all you have to think, and we all do, right? Like, oh, you screwed it up. So it's one thing when you didn't screw it up. It's a whole nother thing when you screw it up. This is where this tool is magic because you're coming to do a repair attempt. You're coming back to like try to fix things. If you can think, how do I want this to end? Grab that piece and make that your starting point with her verbally. So um let's say that I dismissed my wife's feelings and I said, babe, like you're blowing this out of proportion. It's not that bad. And now she's pissed off and she goes, I don't want to talk. Like when my wife goes, I don't want to talk anymore. I'm like, frick, dude, I just really blew that up. So at that point, I'll say like, yeah, I get it. I'll walk away and think through like, I really messed it up. So my repair, I'm going to come back and I'm going to say, um, hey, I know that I dismissed your feelings and that I know that's really painful. I don't, you don't deserve that. And I don't want you to feel dismissed. And because that's how I want us to, and if I jump into, I want to feel connected to you. I want you to feel seen. I want you to feel known. I want you to feel heard. That's the whole start of a lot of guys will come back and say, listen, you're so frustrated about something that happens every day. You're so frustrated about Edie and Liam, having a hard moment. It has to be okay that the kids have a hard moment. You're back in the fight. She still feels dismissed, still feels, doesn't feel seen. Another scenario is I had something really hard happen and I need to confront somebody. They don't know about it. If I start with, hey, I want to share something with you. And I'm doing this because I want to feel connected. I want to feel known. At the end, like I want you to know where I'm at so that we can solve this problem. You just set them up for success. And now I'm going to use the tool and the principle of talking about myself, right? Not talking about them, but talking about myself. So that would be the next plug and play in there. It's like start with the end.
Yep.
So the principle is if how you start a conversation decides how it ends with 80% accuracy.
That's it.
So that's where it starts. I don't think it was the Gottman Institute that said start with the end in mind. But I've learned that if you start with how you want things to end, if you grab that and put it in the beginning, it's magic. They just say a soft startup decides how the whole conversation goes.
Okay. This is so helpful. I would stay, the last 10 minutes of this conversation, JJ. I want to stay there longer, but
Okay, cool.
there's so many other areas that I wanted to ask you about, and for specifically dads with a 4-year-old, 2-year-old, because kind of the phase of your littles. You got your adult kids, and then you got the two littles.
Yeah.
I just thought it'd be helpful to go this direction for a little while here of what have you learned the last few years since we connected last for the last DadAwesome
Yeah.
podcast? Like, are there some learnings that you could be like, hey,
Yeah.
this has got to be transferable to the DadAwesome
I'm
community?
relearning everything. and and I don't want to. I'm not like, oh, I'm rewriting the book on. I'm not rewriting any book. I'm relearning. I did parenting, for those of you that don't know, I have a 24-year-old, a 22-year-old, a 20, and almost a 20-year-old, and for my first marriage. So I'm remarried. We went on this, I don't know, 9-year infertility journey with my now wife. And so it took a long time to have kids again. And now I'm doing it over again. And I thought, it's going to be, not easy, but I know what I'm doing. And the truth is I know what I did. And, but what I'm doing now, so where I'm at now, my daughter has some sensitivity issues, some sensory issues, and or challenges, whatever you want to call them. I don't even know correct term, but some challenges. And so, putting on pants when she turned 3, my mother-in-law passed away, and we went down there for 5 weeks to South Carolina, and we were in her home for 5 weeks, and it was very, very hard on my 3-year-old to watch her grandma dying.
Yeah.
And and so that kind of kicked in. What was already tough kind of made it really tough. And so, my old way of parenting was just love and logic, which was great. And works if you have normal, easy kids, like it works, and you think that you're the best parent in the world. I've got a lot of friends who think they're the best parent in the world. You're parenting kids that are fairly easy, and that's fine. That's great. Like, I hope that's all everyone has. But what I learned is my love and logic style is fairly dismissive of what she's really going through, and it values compliance more than it does emotional connection. And so I am we have my daughter in some play therapy and some listening therapy as well, which has helped immensely. But what's honestly helped the most is Lauren and I are in therapy with the therapist learning. So I'll give you an example. 5:30 this morning, 5:40 this morning, my daughter's calls out my name, Dad. So I go in there, and she's ready to get up. So I know that I'm going to play on the ground with my daughter. Well, I played on the ground with her for the next hour and 20 minutes. And I'm going to interact in a way that's engaging, that's curious, and so before, love and logic me would have, we're not ready to get up. This isn't the time to get up. And,
Yeah.
You need to stay in your room, and then she's going to cry. And hey, if you're not fun, like you're not being fun. And so I'm just realizing, like, everything to me now, everything is happens through emotional connection. She still needs to fear God. She still needs to respect mom and I. And so we were learning the journey of validating where she's at while not tolerating disrespect, while not just shutting down her emotions, because it's so easy to go, hey, you can't talk to me like that. And she actually feels really afraid, or she feels so frustrated. So why she's talking to me like that is because she feels so frustrated. So it's like, I have to handle her little heart. And then when she's regulated, go back to, hey, baby, it's not okay to talk to dad like that.
Yeah.
And to reinforce it when she can hear. Because somehow we believe this myth that when our kids are super dysregulated, that's the best time to try to teach them a lesson. It's not.
Isn't
They
that the
can't hear. She
lizard
can't.
brain when they go into that fight or flight, right?
Yeah, she's fighting for her life. And I'm going, it's not okay to disrespect. Like, I'm tough enough. Here's the truth. It's because I'm afraid, right? I'm afraid that if she acts out like this, that she's going to be off the rails and out of control. But here's the truth. If she feels emotionally connected and she feels seen and known and heard, then she will protect that connection. Everything comes out of that. And what I didn't know for a long time is that babies don't have the ability to regulate their emotions on their own. They do it through co-regulation. And so it actually takes me, the parent, to bring peace to the child. That's why we rock, like we instinctually rock the babies, and we instinctually go, shh. Like, no one really had to tell you to do that. We just do that. It's because their brain isn't fully developed enough to do that on their own. Well, as they're getting older, and even as their brain's developing, we're teaching them, we're imparting to them regulation. This is how you regulate. So as my daughter gets older, and we're watching it now, this morning I walked in this is a great example. I walk in this morning and my daughter goes, I don't want you in here. I want mom. And I go, oh, babe, I'm just here. I'm here because you called, because she actually called for mom, but mom's sleeping. I'm here because mom didn't sleep last night. And, and, and so I'm here to be with you. And she goes, Dad, I don't want you to be here. Now she wakes up dysregulated some mornings. And so I said, hey, baby, I really love you. I, I'm going to, I'm going to, I'm going to be here if you want me here. She goes, I don't want you here. Get out. And I was like, and so I said, hey, this isn't super fun for me. I just want to let you know this isn't fun for me. This is really tough for me. I go back to my room. I lay down. 5 minutes later, she calls me, Dad. So I go back in and she goes, hey, good morning, Dad. I said, good morning, babe. She said, can I get up? Is it morning time? And I said, you can get up. And what do you want to do? You want to play? Yeah, let's play. Well, she's learning. She used to stay in that mode until I found a way. I would find a creative way to get her to interact with me, to help her regulate, to get out of that mood. Now we've over time helped her learn that she can make a decision. She can climb the happiness ladder and she can go from a place of being unhappy to happy. And so she's literally doing that on her own now in repairing, right? She's coming to a place where she goes, oh, I'm really dysregulated. I actually didn't feel good with what I did with dad. That wasn't fun for me. I want to have a fun morning. I'm going to try again. And I get to go in and we had a great morning. She didn't actually freak out at all. I'm learning. I'm learning and I'm growing. Where I'd have felt really disrespected. I would have not been fun. I'm not, it's not okay to talk to dad like this. If you're going to talk to me, I'm going to leave the room. And, all that stuff, there's a place for some of that stuff. And you can't just let your kids run over you, but you also have to realize like, I've got, I've got 18 years to win this.
Yep.
I got 18 years. The most important thing that she knows in this moment is that, like God, I won't leave you. I won't forsake you. I'm not afraid of your pain. I'm not afraid of your worst day. And honestly, I'm terrified of it. It's scary. It's very dysregulating to me. It's very, very challenging. I don't like those moments. I want to do everything in my power to end those moments. So I have to regulate my own emotion. I have to talk myself down while she's doing that. Otherwise, I will act out. So that's what I'm learning.
That
And
is, I mean,
I
this is
took
so
all that
helpful. You
time.
packed so many like wisdom, like dad wisdom moments in that. Just what are you learning in one story? I would love to send our Dad Awesome community your way. So to follow you on
Yeah,
Instagram, to check out BraveCo. You got a big event in June. Send our guys that
yeah,
direction. Your courses, your coaching. Uh, Specifically, I'm going to put there's 6 things that make a BraveCo man. I could record a whole podcast with you around each of those 6. So I'm going to
mhm,
link it as just a way of like, wow, if these resonate with you, get over to Jay Valentin and to BraveCo. So that's all. I'm going to send our community your way.
great.
So grateful for you and so like Jay, the level that you, instead of trusting your feelings, your emotions, in that story you just told, the amount that you're like, I'm going to be aware that this and this and this are
Yeah,
firing within me, but I'm going to bring a presence of peace to my daughter. I'm going to bring my strength and awareness that I have a lot more years lived than she does in this moment. I'm going to walk with steadiness back to the bedroom and then just like look at what happens when we enter versus trying to come against that. That's not what you should be doing in this moment. So there's so much there. I'm so grateful for you. I was hoping you could just pray over all of us as we end our time.
I can 100%. Yeah. And I have a marriage podcast as well. So if couples are looking for help and kids, so it's called Dates, Mates, and Babies with the Balance. And so you can
Yes.
just go check that out. Father, thank you so much for what you're doing in our lives. And Lord, being a man, being a husband, being a father is a tough job. And Lord, we are we're all in the same boat. John Eldridge gave me this prayer. He said, I'm your son. and you're my dad. Would you come father me today? And Lord, that's the prayer that we have, that you would come father us, Lord, that you would help us to live wholeheartedly, or that you would help us to address those areas in our life that we feel scared and powerless and weak in. And Father, that you would bring us to a place where we don't lack anything, Lord, that we would have your grace, your mercy, and your wisdom to walk wholeheartedly, God, in everything that you've called us to do. Amen.
Hey, BraveCo men. Hopefully you loved this week's episode. Listen, if you have not subscribed to our podcast, you are already behind. Go ahead and click right here to subscribe to our podcast. And if you have not watched last week's episode, you can click right here and watch last week's episode. And listen, if you want to upgrade your wardrobe, you can check out some of our new hats that we have in stock and all our other swag. Go to braveco.org and you can look at our store there. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.